So these spindles have ended up in my stash. I'm gonna do some cleanup and get rid of things like nails sticking out or other parts on it. I'm gonna do that real quick, and then we're gonna cut them up so that I can use them in my next project. I know that for many of you, working on Christmas projects in May seems like it's a bit premature, but you have to understand when you're in retail, seasons come early. You've got to get a lot done way before time. Having the right tools makes this quick and easy, but you can do this without all of the power tools. And you'll notice that I didn't clean up some things that I thought I would. I actually decided some of these holes and the way the legs had popped might make good bird houses. So the first thing I'm going to do is drill holes into these. I'm going to start off with a pilot hole, and then I'm going to drill the larger hole. I was holding up the bit so you could see what you want to do is sort of match it to the trunk size. I've decided I'm going to use Dixie Belle in the color White Cap. This is silk mineral paint, which is an all-in-one. It has primer, paint, and top coat, which means that I don't have to seal these when I'm done. And we also carry Fusion, which is an all-in-one, but if I'm going to distress, I have to be honest and say I prefer Dixie Belle's product. It doesn't harden quite as fast, which makes it easier for me to distress, and also it doesn't leave sort of streaks in the finish as I'm sanding. So what I'm doing here is actually applying what I'll call a heavy dry brush. And I am going to do 2 coats of it. I haven't really cleaned these well. I haven't sanded them. I haven't done anything because when I sand, if there's anything, any debris, loose debris on there that comes off as I'm sanding, it's just going to make them chippier and a little more rustic, which is what I like. I'm also not bothering to paint the top or the bottom because in the end, you're not going to see them. I don't know how well you can see the difference between the ones that have had 1 coat and the ones that have 2 coat, but the 1 coat is just a little more transparent and streaky versus the 2 coat. And in places like the ones I've decided to turn into birdhouses, you actually can see there's much more depth where there is 2 coats. I've let these dry for about 20 minutes. Really, by the time you get to the end, you're kind of ready to start sanding, but I did have lunch in the middle. So I am just going to go ahead and sand these all with 220 grit sandpaper. No rhyme or reason. I just want them to look a little bit aged and distressed. Last year, I cut apart a Christmas tree for hanging ornaments in our booth. Now I have literally an extra large box that is full of these pieces that I trimmed off. So I'm going to turn these into little mini Christmas trees using my spindles. I am just using some scissors and trimming them down. The first thing I do is basically trim everything at the bottom so that I can have a place that will actually fit into the spindles. After that, I'm just going to start trimming everything into a triangle, shaping it as I go. Now I want to add some moss. I'm going to hot glue that. I'm just going to use a craft stick to hold that down so I don't burn my fingers, and then stick my tree in, and there you go. I'll trim at the moss so it's nice and clean. This is sort of me editing out of order, but I did like how you could really see the Christmas tree shapes with them all here on the table. I added some moss to the birdhouse areas, and then some of the taller ones or ones that needed something, I added a little bit of ribbon to as well. You can kind of see my entire forest, and you can also see up close, I added some additional shapes where I didn't go with just a straight up triangle. Some of them I sort of cut out the middle, which is like a really old rustic tree. I'm going to call this next project a happy accident because the idea and inspiration came as I was clearing off the space to stage my photos. I found 3 little bottles sitting there where Sue had gone through some of her stash from where she buys out houses, or at least used to earlier last year, and I am just stuffing them full of leftover ribbon that I have from making holiday wreaths. Those will be in a future video. But anyway, I'm just trimming these down so they're in very small little strips, and I'm stuffing them into the 2 clear bottles that I have. Once again, I'm just going to take some Spanish moss and I'm going to stuff it in there a little bit and glue it. I did end up pulling it out and kind of gluing it into the neck of it. I didn't do that on camera because I realized afterwards that it wasn't quite enough just to glue it on the tree. But here I'm trimming up another piece of that greenery that I took off of that old Christmas tree. And when I say I have a lot of this, I am not kidding you. Then I decided I needed a little bit more ribbon because I think this bottle needs some ribbon on the outside, not just on the inside. I think these turned out totally adorable, and it's good to get rid of just a little bit more junk on my counters and actually turn it into something useful and sellable. And here's a quick reminder that you can follow us on all social media at Vintage Bee Design, and we have a community in Facebook called Creating the Hive or Creative Con Vintage Bee. And I've just started this month a new coaching group. Membership is only $20 a month. There's lots of discounts. Links in the description below. Let's get back to crafting. I have a glow forge to cut out these little shapes, but I actually had my friend Chris cut these out for me because I wanted 200 of them. Now I will actually have the cutout cathedral shape available on our website in packs of 3 for $3.95. One of the tips I have when you're painting mass quantities is if they're all the same size, just go ahead and grab a handful. So I guess I did 7 of them, a little stack of 7, and paint the sides. In this case, I'm using DIY's Dark and Decrepit, and I'm staining them basically with the Dark and Decrepit, and do them all at once. Then you can lay them out. The next step after those are dry is to mix up some paint and some salt wash. I want this to be fairly thick. It doesn't need to be super thick because I'm going to be spreading it on very thin, but you want it to have some decent consistency. And then I am going to be using a silicone spatula, and what I'm actually going to do here is just drag this across. I'm just dipping the tip into the salt wash mix and spreading it across. And the idea is that you do not want full coverage. You want that brown to show through. If you actually want this to crackle, that can be achieved by doing a second coat that's a little bit heavier and then applying heat, and that will crack the salt wash. I didn't opt to do that because I have 200 of these, and I did this to the front and back of all of the pieces. For the door to the cathedral, I am simply using some large tongue depressor or craft sticks, and I'm cutting them in half, which is about 3 inches. The red tape is to show me exactly where that mark is, so I've measured that from the blade to the tape, and I'm just cutting stacks of them 4 or 5 at a time in order to make this go a little bit faster. And this is a band saw that I'm using for this project. For this, I'm using Dixie Belle's Black Sea, which is a all-in-one as well. You might notice a trend here. I have 200 of these to do. I don't want to top coat them when I'm done. I sanded the doors and then used more of that greenery that I have from that Christmas tree and have trimmed it and then used a battery to wrap it around for the right size. And now I'm going to hot glue it on. Now I have some of these that I painted some topiaries on, and I didn't film doing that because I wanted to see if I could do it first. And I did about 35 of them that way, and I probably won't do any more. And because I didn't do the second batch, I wanted to see what the process would be before I filmed it. And since I don't think I want to make any more that way, it took a long time to do. I don't have a tutorial, but I'm going to show it to you both with and without the topiaries. And if you really want me to do a tutorial on it, I'll do that on a different project. But now I'm just adding just a little hand-tied bow, and you do have to hold this for a minute because it does have a little bit of texture. The hot glue doesn't want to sit. Right, so here's me doing the same thing without the topiaries because I wasn't going to show you the topiaries because I don't want to make any more. But then I thought I should give you the option of seeing some other ways you could stylize these, you know, just in case you do want to make some for yourself. And I do appreciate your feedback, so let me know, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the topiaries or without the topiaries? I really thought that they were a little plain without, but I don't know. I don't know if I want to make that many topiaries. At this point, I'll probably go with what I have, but if you really love the topiaries, let me know, or if you really love it plain, let me know that. We have some of your favorite Prima products back in stock. Yay! And we have the new H2O transfers coming up, so be sure to check those out. We have tons of new midis as well as restock on our regular midis. We have the new DIY brushes in stock. Check those out. Some new gilding papers from Dixie Belle, which are so cool. And there is even a new yellow patina spray, perfect for your pumpkins that are coming up in a video to be shown soon. Sue came up with this craft project and she was supposed to film it and kind of forgot to film parts of it. So basically we've got some large beads here that she is stuffing a red ticking fabric up into, and this is going to serve as a snowman's hanger for the tree as well as his scarf.
Got the head. Got my fabric. Fold a little puppy in half. Take my little wonderful skewer. Put it on the end. And shove it. Sometimes it goes through, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't. That's when we do the twisty, pinchy, pushy, pinch, twist and squeeze and push it through. Pinch, squeeze, twist and push. I'm telling you, the twisting and the pinching is the secret. Boring now, but Melissa will get a hold of them and she'll put cute little faces on each and every one of them.
So I think this is where I come back. Sue missed recording the part where she actually cut down the spindles from spindles we had in a big box of chair parts, and then she painted them with Fusion's Champlain. I'm going to give everything a quick sand with 220 grit sandpaper. Now I'm going to use my hot glue gun and simply glue the head in place. I do need to make sure to put some at the base under the wood ball as well as under the ribbon to make sure that where they're touching that there's glue on either side. And because her design didn't have an actual scarf going around the neck, just sort of coming from his neck, I also took a little bit extra of that red ticking and went around the snowman's head. And I think this actually gives it a little bit more security. What I like about her design is that that loop is not going to come off and we didn't have to figure out a way to attach that into the ball. What I dislike is it made it a little bit harder to attach the head to the body. And of course, I gave Sue crap about not filming parts. And what do? I forget to film the dots. So I just used the back of a small paintbrush, dipped it into the Dixie Belle Black Sands, and made little dots. Now I'm going to use a permanent fine tip marker in the color orange, and I'm just going to draw a little tiny carrot nose. If you have puff paint, I have used that before too, and it does make a very nice pointy nose, so that is also an option. I think the permanent orange is perfect though. Using a fine tip stylus, I am simply going to make little coal dots here in a smiley face. There is one that I did just the initial dot, and I don't know, he kind of like, ooh, and I decided he didn't need the other dots. He was perfect just like that. Now you absolutely can stop here. He's a perfectly good snowman, but I have a face that I like to make, so I'm using the even teenier part of my stylus and giving him little whites of his eyes. And now for the secret sauce. I have blush, yes, actually blush, that I'm applying with a Q-tip, and I'm gonna give him a little rosy cheeks. And this to me is always the secret of getting those cute little rosy cheeks. I've tried it with paint, and I've been a crafter for most of my life, and I'm just gonna say straight up blush gives you the best rosy cheeks, not only on your actual face, but on the snowman face as well. Then using that tiny point, I like to put little white dots at the top of the little cheekies. I have some with and without so you can see the difference, but to me, it's just the perfect finishing touch. Okay, that's it. Here are the little snowmen. I think they are completely adorable. This takes me back because I used to love to make snowmen, but living here in Florida, we don't get many opportunities. If you enjoyed this project, please be sure to hit like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.